Well, as you get ready to hopefully finish off your Christmas with an Eagles win against the Giants are hoping that Boston Scott somehow misses the bus to the link on Monday afternoon because the Giant Killer has been exactly that in his entire career. He's only had 12% of his games against the Giants, but he's accounted for 55% of his touchdowns and 41% of his carries inside the 5 when playing Big Blue. Oh, and Scott has scored in all 9 games against the Giants, making him an all but guaranteed bet for your betting slips on Monday afternoon. Meanwhile, the Giants running back Saquon Barkley, he's looking for a little revenge against Philadelphia. When asked about going 0-3 against the Eagles last season, he said, "I don't think that sits well in anybody's stomach. We hate saying that we hate answering the questions. How would it feel to win in Philly or to not beat Philly? We're sick and tired of it." Now, I'd of course be shocked if the Eagles dropped a 4th straight game, but maybe Monday will be our first double-digit win in a very, very long time. I'm sick and tired of not winning by double digits. What do you guys think is going to happen on Christmas Day? Now, Philly will be shorthanded in that matchup versus the G-Men, as Slay, Cunningham, Dickerson, and probably Nicholas Morrow will be out. Jurgens and Smitty will play, though, and although Avonte Maddox practiced all week, he's probably going to go ahead and sit this one out. Now, since it is Christmas and people give gifts during the holidays, why wouldn't Howie Roseman give us a late Christmas gift by going after recently released Chargers starting defensive tackle Sebastion Joseph-Day, who was kind of oddly cut by the struggling Chargers despite 11 quarterback hits this season, which was second most in the Chargers defense, trailing only Khalil Mack. He's a 5-year veteran, a Super Bowl champion with the LA Rams in 2021, and could really bolster any playoff team's interior defensive pass rush and run-stopping abilities. And I know we're always tired of talking about how every single free agent is going to come to Philadelphia until they don't. An interior defensive lineman is something Howie is always keeping an eye on, like he did with Linval, Joseph, and Ndamukong Suh last year. I think Joseph Day could be a really interesting piece on the final year of his deal to bring in some insurance and depth to help solidify maybe the run and the pass defense as we march towards the postseason. Now, of course, that playoff run revolves around Jalen Hurts, and if you thought Jeff McClain's report about the Eagles having internal concerns about Hurts was bad enough, the Inquirer reporter dropped a new bombshell saying that Jalen Hurts has been given more opportunity this season to call plays at the line of scrimmage. A source believes this has had an adverse effect on the Eagles' offense. Now, you can either believe that or not. It's really up to you. But all this suddenly coming out during a losing streak, when Hurts has been here for over 3.5 years, it's so odd to me. Like, all of a sudden, he doesn't know how to read defenses, and all of a sudden, he's a bad teammate inside the locker room. Color me skeptical, but media members are probably looking for clicks during what's normally a very slow media time during Christmas week. Not saying that that's the case. Obviously, he has sources, but this just continues to pop up at really strange times, and I'm really hoping that Jalen Hurts can dominate, ball out, and look great on Monday afternoon, and maybe quiet the skeptics for at least another week. Now, speaking of the Giants and Jalen Hurts' struggles, Josh Davis and I spoke about all of the issues surrounding Philadelphia, and also look forward to the Giants matchup a little bit earlier this week. Take a listen. Well, then you got super chats like D Dragon here, the $2 super chat who says, "Does Nick have too many yes men?" There's just no way to know, and that's the whole problem. Like, we're not sitting in the offensive game planning meetings, and either, right, the idea here is Nick's in the offensive meetings, he goes, "We're going to do this, 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 and this," and Brian Johnson goes, "Yes, great idea, coach," and the quarterback's coach says, "Yes, great idea, coach," or it's the opposite, and Brian goes, "No, let's do this," and then they, butt heads and go back and forth. We have no idea. It's so hard to know what the real problem is right now, because there's the whole idea of Jalen Hurts not playing well, and he's not playing well. I mean, we got to be honest about that. And I know that, there's a lot of talk about A.J. Brown going at a fan on Twitter and saying that the deep ball on the left side
Mhm.
was supposed to be to him, and he's not supposed to look at Devontae Smith because he's the number one read. Okay, but you're telling me that other quarterbacks wouldn't have moved their eyes down after seeing that it wasn't necessarily an open pass to A.J. Brown and seen a
They
wide
should
open
have.
Devontae Smith? I mean, it's not like he has to throw to A.J. Brown if you're the one read. It's one, and then two as it comes across. And for whatever reason, he didn't do that. Same goes for a triple team deep ball to A.J. Brown on the right side to end the game when he could dump it off to Kenny Gainwell. He's not seeing the field well. He hadn't done it all year. You talked about it on your recap show yesterday. You go back to week 2, that pass against the Minnesota Vikings. Like, un-Jalen Hurts-esque plays are contributing to the problems that are there, because you can argue, well, Devontae Smith was open. That's the coach scheming him open. You got to do, only do so much if you're
Mhm.
Brian Johnson. You can't hand the guy the football. So there are a lot of issues right now, but as brutal as it is, and trust me, I read my comments, people are upset here, and I'm the exact same way. You do understand that if they drop 30 on the Giants and win on Christmas afternoon, this and one of two things happen: Dallas loses, or the Niners lose, or both. Very possible against the Dolphins and the Baltimore Ravens. Things change very quickly in a week-to-week league, very quickly. And Adam Schefter on my show
Sure.
today, he made some good points on the Fanatic. He said the Rams had a 3-game losing streak when they won a couple of years ago. You go back to Philadelphia, had their own 3-game losing streak the year they won the Super Bowl. Like teams lose, it happens. But we need to see life. We need to see hope. We need to see proof that you know what you're doing, and they can do that against a bad team on Sunday, or I guess Monday afternoon.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Again, it's hard to see that. It's hard to be the optimist or the glass half full, especially after
Yeah.
what we've seen here. And I said it on my show too. It's like I need them to prove it at this point. There's not
Mhm.
a part of me that can go into it and say like, oh yeah, hey, I'm going to buy that. We're good. No big deal. We shouldn't have any concerns. Like they do need to prove it to me. And so um there is a possibility. I'm not saying it's impossible. I hear you. I see it as far as what you're talking about too on your show with the three losses in a row. It is possible. And even last season, I mean, I think a lot of us would say I was definitely in this boat, but like as we got into the playoffs, I was saying to myself, like, I'm not so sure about this team. Like, we
Yeah.
looked pretty
Yeah.
good. Then all of a sudden, the injury with Jalen, and
Mhm.
is he going to come back? To what extent? And then even that first game, back, it's some struggles against the Giants. I know it was kind of a very vanilla offense because you're probably going to play him in the next round too. But still, there wasn't a lot of I don't know, certainty or confidence going into it. Again, you get a Giants matchup, but I mean, we were going to beat them in the playoffs. Like, I don't think there was as much concern there.
Right.
But then you're just all of a sudden, hey, here's the Niners. Like, there it is, NFC Championship. Niners are here.
Yeah.
An opponent, and then obviously we know what happened with Brock Purdy. So there's a lot that can happen. We know in the NFL. I think that if you can get the home field advantage, we know how important that is. It's not impossible. I hate the fact that now we're relying more so on other teams to help out too. But again, I mean, yeah, if you can get this thing kind of under wraps, it's just that we've seen this so many times throughout the season now, and the
Yeah.
common denominator and the facts add up. I don't know. And you brought up a good point too of like Jalen. Certainly, he's not seeing the field well. We've both talked about it a number of times, and it's escalated to this point.
Yeah.
But I guess again, the question is, because we don't know and we're not behind the scenes, is like how much of it is on Jalen. I know that some is.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, some is on Jalen. I don't care who your offensive coordinator is. I don't care who's in your ear.
Yeah.
You got to see the feel better. And Jalen would take some blame for that. He said that he has not played up to the standard. However, I've got to wonder, like, if it is Sirianni's offense, and we know that Sirianni loves the big play, he loves the big
Mhm.
shots, and he mentioned in
Mhm.
his presser today of, hey, the
Mhm.
offense looks pretty much the same with the exception of, and he said two things: turnovers and big plays.
Fair.
And if he's pointing that out, I'm just wondering if all throughout the season, his target or his top of mind thing to Jalen is, hey, take the big shot. Hey, take the big shot. Be looking for the big play here. And look, it worked last season, but teams, as we know, everyone adjusts and adapts in this league. So if they're like, hey, you know what? Let's try to take that away from Jalen in this offense because Sirianni loves it. Like, that's a staple of a Nick
Mhm.
Sirianni offense. And it's pretty predictable if you watch Christian McCaffrey, and say, hey, this is what the play's called coming. But everyone realizes that. And I'm
Yeah.
just wondering, at some point, if he's in the ear of Jalen so many times, is it making it harder for Jalen to see the field? Again, I will say it is
Yeah.
Jalen's fault, but if it's every single, hey, check the deep shot. Hey, watch for AJ here. It's like, man, you got Devontae wide open. You got a check
Mhm.
down there. You've got another one, like you mentioned with Kenny Gainwell. The end of the game, is very important. A guy that, I'm just picturing so many times we see in big moments, big games, especially Patrick Mahomes, something like that. It's a little dump off, like Tom Brady,
Mhm.
right? A little dump off to Kevin Falk action. Like every quarterback has a very easy way of just, oh, there's your guy. And all of a sudden the defense forgot about him. Now I know the linebacker's sitting on it, and I got a lot of comments about that, but you look at that. I'm hard pressed. If Kenny gets stopped, if he gets tackled in that position, you have timeouts anyway. But
Yes.
I would be shocked if Kenny gets stopped without getting at least about 10 yards or so. With the position that he's at, if Jalen leads him just a tad to the left, I don't know. It seems impossible to me, but it's like I say, it's hard to know. It's hard to know for sure. Everyone I think is at fault here. There's probably enough blame to go around. The question is, are they able to fix it in such a short turnaround? Because it doesn't feel like it's one of those
Yeah.
things. It's like, hey, we're almost there. It feels like these are pretty big gaps and pretty big holes here. I don't know if you can fill it that quickly and say, hey, we're gonna be confident going to the playoffs.
I do think the Sirianni has to be a little careful though, because the same thing happened with the Doug Peterson era right at the end there. You started having people talk in press conferences. You started having things kind of get out a little bit, right? You weren't having AJ Brown, calling out fans on Twitter, right? You weren't having people mentioning commitment in press conferences last year, but Go back to the Doug Peterson year, 2020, he's let go, shockingly, just after a Super Bowl, a couple of years removed, and he's like, oh, a little bit of locker room turmoil. He can't lose the locker room. I don't know if he has. It's very hard to tell when a coach has lost a locker room when your team has a winning record. Like when your team has a losing record, very clear if you lost the locker room. When you have a winning record, hard to tell if you lost the locker room. But we keep hearing this word commitment, keep hearing this word buy-in. Clearly, people are not doing that, and the question is, who is it? And why is that the case? And if it's the head coach, is it the coordinators, is it the play calling, is it something else? I really do not know. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do this weekend, though. I keep saying that they need a get right game. And I really thought Seattle was going to be that get right game. And we got to hope and pray the Giants is the get right game, because if they struggle against the Giants on Christmas Day, it's going to get even uglier than it already is. And it's very ugly right now. So we'll see.
Can you imagine a Christmas Day?
Yes.
It's 12 points. It opened at 10.5. It's 12 points now.
Crazy how big it is.
All the signs are suggesting that this should be an Eagles finally for once and for all, like just start to finish, control the game. But I'm right. You're right. If it's one of those that all of a sudden it's a nail biter last second possession, I don't know what to say at that point. I mean, I already don't know what to say, but that would be horrific.
D-Dragon says, we have the talent and more than enough opportunities. We can march down the field, but our red zone is horrendous. The math isn't mathing. The math isn't mathing when Jason Kelce comes out and says we need to hit more big plays, but also says in the same exact WIP interview that they move the ball really well by dinking and dunking on their 2 touchdown drives. Like, that's the math that isn't mathing. Like, sure, we want to hit big plays, but does that mean we don't want 12 play drives to take 8 minutes and score touchdowns? Like, I think that those are okay too, right? Like,
they're perfectly fine. Yes. Yeah. Especially again, because teams know that that's what we want to do. We want to take those shots. Like I did an interview with Brandon Kane of the Hawks Nest, and he's a Seahawks YouTube channel, but he was great because he was breaking it down too. And we're basically arguing beforehand of like, who has the worst defense? Cause that's what it felt like. It felt like going into this game, or going into Monday night's game, it was going to be like, which defense can you just get like one stop? Because what we'd seen, now that was right before the news of Patricia broke, so there was a little bit more optimism on my side, but still it was like, hey, neither team can get stops. This is not going to be great. The only thing that he was thinking might be okay was the fact that they run a lot of cover 3, a lot of cover 4, and so they're going to try to stop the big plays. And it's like, yeah, if you continue with just taking the middle of the field, taking the dink and dunk, you're going to march right down the field. And that's what we saw. It was so great. And then for some reason, Sirianni's like, let's try it. Let's go for it. And the thing that I cannot understand, and you talked about it, everyone's talked about it. Why on earth is Quez Watkins getting a deep shot? And I've seen comments, and for people that are like, oh, it's a safety, it's an okay play. I don't care.
No,
I don't care who is back there. It could be a linebacker, and I do not throw it to Quez Watkins because he's not proven to do anything. And again, Sirianni, we talk about the press conference, and he's like, oh, hey, Quez can possibly run back through, maybe get a little pass interference or something like that. Whatever. Right. The speed, we could look at that. I'm sorry. They knew it was coming. Quez he wasn't even prepared. The dude's literally looking at AJ like, hey, I'm maybe going to go for a route here. AJ's looking at him like, bro, I don't know what you're running. I don't know what this play is, because AJ barely walks off the line of scrimmage. So he's a non-factor. It's like there was only one play on that, or there was only one route on that play, basically. Like Jalen takes a snap and he's automatically being like, yep, I'm throwing it deep. And I know it was a one-on-one. I hear everyone who's made those comments, but it is Quez Watkins. And for Sirianni to stand up there in the press conference and say, we've hit that play. When have you hit that play? When has that play worked? There's no proof on it except for maybe practice. Fine. You want to say maybe in practice we've seen that one, but in games, in high stress moments, I just don't understand. It is ridiculous. And he continues to go to Quez. He continues to stand up for Quez and go to bat for him. It's insanity. It is absolute insanity.
Yeah, there's one thing when you have a receiver that takes the top off of defenses, but defenses don't care if he hasn't done it in 2 years, right? Like, you got to do it consistently for me to be scared of you, or else we're going to not be scared and put a safety on him like they did on that exact play, and it worked out pretty darn well.
One time. Yeah. Everyone knew it was coming to. Julian Love, you saw the interview afterwards, he's like, oh, yeah, I knew it was happening. And he knew AJ, too. He's like, yep, I know Levin's a really good player. I know a last-second, game situation there. Jalen's going to look at him. He's like, I'm just watching the eyes, watching 11 break on the ball. It's so telegraphed. It is so telegraphed. And I know that the one that kind of blew up everything was the Christian McCaffrey, but to me, it's a lot more alarming. Curious your thoughts too, but just the fact that not only McCaffrey is picking that out, but if a back on an opposing team is immediately seeing it and calling it out, I'm telling you, the linebackers and the defensive linemen and safeties that are game planning for these games, they can read it. I don't care that Sirianni's like, oh, we never ran that play. We've never run it from that set.
Yeah, then how did he
Sorry,
know?
because he knew it without a shadow of a doubt. That play's going to be
man.
running. So if he knew it, the defense already knew it. But I don't know. It's again, there's so many predictability. I know his comment is, hey, there's staples of offenses. I understand. Yes, there's staples of offenses that other teams
Sure.
run, but it is so predictable at this point. Anyone, any casual fan, we could sit there and be like, hey, here's the QB draw. We're about to do
Yeah.
it. Here's a wide receiver screen to Goddard. Let's have Smitty block because that works great. There's so many things about this. It just doesn't make sense.